Good choice. Good choice.
There we are.
Hello.
So can you tell us a little bit about what it was like being on Stargate? You were on Stargate with your character for many seasons. How was that process, and how did you become involved on Stargate?
Well, like most people, most Vancouver actors, I was lucky enough to get an audition, and I started out as Sergeant Reynolds,
Yeah.
and the first I hadn't done many things at that point, or felt like I hadn't done many things at that point, and then to be working with the leads and was very, very exciting. And I had auditioned 6 or maybe 10 times before that, and just wasn't right for this and wasn't right for that. And in the end, getting that and jumping in, the production crew already really had it was very much a family. They were already speaking in shorthand, sort of early after 2 or 3 seasons. They already spoke shorthand, so anybody wanted anything, they wouldn't talk about the full thing, or it was all they developed an ease in a language that was really amazing. So as a day player, you come in and it feels you feel a bit like the third cousin who doesn't know anybody at a big party. And so all the inside jokes and all the colloquial sort of talk that they had, not that they were trying to exclude me, but there's just a it was just an ease with everybody, and being nervous and trying to do my best, but really feeling like, whoa, what the heck is going on? It was a very exciting time. And then, the sergeant becomes a major, and the major becomes a colonel. And actually, Robert Cooper said, you're the fastest advanced soldier in the Army. Oh, hang on, I'm getting a dog steal here. Let's see.
She's going for a walk.
She's going
Bringing her out for a walk.
Take him for a walk.
Yes.
It's my daughter Tegan. Thanks. But yeah, I asked Robert Cooper. It was during the filming of the movie, and I said, "Why me?" And he said, we can get lots of people to play like straight military kind of guys. Shaved head, jar head kind of guys. But he said, whenever we needed a smart military guy, we thought of you. And I thought that was really ironic. And so just was thrilled that they would think of me at all. And it was a funny thing. There's an episode where they were developing more of my backstory, and I was standing with Robert and Rick, and they said, "Well, what's your first name?" And I said, "I don't know. You tell me." And they said, "What was the name that you always used to want to have when you were a kid?" And I turned and I looked at Rick and I said, "Jack." And he's like, "Well, we can't have two." I'm like, "Okay, but that's the name I always had when I was a kid." He's like, "Oh, okay, yeah." So, so there were moments on the show where people would, ask you for input. And when Rick retired, at the closing night party, he was on his way out. I bumped into him sort of the last time I've seen him in person, and he said, "I'm done." And I said, "That's the rumor I'd heard. Thank you for telling me." He said, "No, I'm done. You should talk to your agent, and you should, get on this, because you could do my job." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, Rick. That's very nice of you." I'm sure by then they already had had somebody in mind and in line, but
But
it
your
was just
your
really
characters were similar though in style and input in the show.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, no, we had traveled. Our characters had traveled the same path
Yeah.
for sure. I don't think I spent that many seasons fixing things using duct tape and twist ties, but
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yes. Well, it was very interesting because I've watched all of Stargate SG-1, SGU, and SGA, and I really liked the how your character developed through SG-1, and you were kind of the Earth version of Jack
yeah,
for the show, which is
yeah,
kind of neat to see develop and morph into the years as they progress. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I had an inner ear imbalance, so I couldn't handle space travel or something like that. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
But they had to have a good guy on the ground, you know? There you go. So
Somebody to look after things here. That's a
yeah.
good point. That's a good point.
And then
Yeah.
I also saw you were in Scary Movie 3 and Godzilla. How were those projects? Because they would be similar in sci-fi for Godzilla, but different themes.
Well, so Scary Movie 3, I got a chance to work with Leslie Nielsen,
Yeah.
and so on set, and uh, he's a he brought his whoopee cushion with him everywhere, and that was one of his lovely things. At lunchtime, he always checked your seat, and but uh, my dad was in politics. His brother was the Speaker of the Federal House of Commons and a longtime serving member, MP. And so we started talking about Canadian politics, and ended up going and sitting and having lunch with him and just asking him things about, airplane and going way back, and whether he ever thought of giving up or moving from stage to film and TV, and how that such an interesting man, and so generous, and that was a lot of fun, and just hanging around him, enjoying himself.
Yeah.
And then Godzilla, we shot here in Ladner, in the town of Ladner, and then actually the town looks a lot like it does now. It was empty, nobody around, all the streets closed, and I had a really great rapport with the director, and he was quite keen that I would come. The next two scenes that I was going to be in were helicopter scenes in Hawaii, and so I'm pretty keen. But production decided they could get some other 40-year-old white guy to say those lines and look similar enough, who was an American, because I didn't have a working permit, and so yeah, it was like, but Hawaii for 10 days, and okay,
Yeah.
yeah. But it was
Yeah.
that was a great, like, to see, they always call it a circus where the trailers park. That's
Yeah.
a term, and it really was like a circus that day, because the whole town sort of emptied, and we took over kind of in the reverse of, like, everybody just cleared right out, and there were hundreds of extras, and we had that portion of Ladner. It was really of Stevenson, and it was really kind of a cool thing to feel like you're in charge. I was so far from being in charge, but there was a joy to that.
Yes. And
Yeah.
how did you get into acting? What made you decide to go into acting?
I got asked to do a play when I was 13. A friend of mine and I were asked to go. They needed uh, townsfolk for the Music Man. That was a
Oh yeah.
semi-professional production, and so got to go and sing and dance, and all the dancers that they had hired were sort of 15, 16-year-olds. So that was pretty cool for a 13-year-old to get close
Yeah.
to the the big girls. That was pretty awesome. So um, that was kind of the start, and then through high school did it, and never thought. I'm a farm kid from Humboldt, Saskatchewan, so I never thought that there could be a profession in it. But my aunt saw the bigger picture and suggested that maybe look at some different avenues, and so theater school, and started doing stage work after that, and then moved to Vancouver to pursue film and TV. Did X-Files and a whole bunch of Smallvilles, and lots of sci-fi over the years. So
And how was it working on the X-Files set? Did you enjoy that?
yeah, yeah. I got it. I did 4 different characters over 5 episodes on that show, and
I've heard the camaraderie on the set was really good for that show too.
yeah, it was great. Uh, Funny on the movie that they did that I was working on, was lucky enough to have Chris Carter say yes, and um, he actually went to bat for me to play the part that I did, and because he said, nope, this guy can do this, and so that was to be told that on set from him. I was like, oh, right on. That's a huge vote of confidence. And the scene is uh, closing a hospital. There's been a bomb threat, and taking care of a murderer, and so I had this sort of in my brain that we would kind of storm in and sweep everything away, and so we start the rehearsal, and we rehearsed without Jillian, and I did it one time, and then Chris set some other things up. They talked about lighting and whatnot, and then he came over to me and he said, so give me 20% of that. 20%. I'm like, okay. So I went away, and I hadn't seen Jillian yet, but there was a person laying on a hospital bed. We were set in a hospital. There's a person laying on the hospital bed, and I when they called for Jillian, she rose up out of the hospital bed, and it was like freaking, because she would, she's a true veteran and such a talent, and so generous, and a really lovely person, but she's also, as a veteran, she just would get somewhere and lay down and rest, and because it was like 14-hour days constantly for her.
Yeah.
And so she rises up out of the bed and comes over, and we have a little, oh, hey, how are you? Oh, yeah, I all those seasons that she did, and I'm like, she said, we've worked together, and I said, yeah, and I listed the times that we'd worked together. She was just like, oh, yeah, right, yeah. I'm like, it's okay, I remember you. But so we did one take, and Chris came over and said, give me 17%. I'm like, okay. And so we did it again, and in the next take comes up, and he comes over and says, give me 21%. I'm like, okay. And so he gave me a 4% range, but everything was all pulled.
Oh. Um,